To understand the world of the New Testament, we have to deconstruct the very words we use. The question of identity is far more complex than it first appears. So in this study, we're going to strip away modern assumptions to see the first century through its own eyes, using its own language and its own categories.
So, let's start with the question that brings many people to this topic. It seems simple enough, but as we're about to see, answering it properly requires a serious historical and linguistic investigation.
You see, before we can even begin, we have to deal with a major problem: the word Jew itself. The modern English term is loaded with 2,000 years of history, culture, and religious development that simply did not exist in the first century. Using that word for that time period creates an anachronism. It hides the historical reality instead of revealing it.
So here is our roadmap. First, we'll examine the problem of terminology. Then, we will look at the actual vocabulary people used in the first century and explore the diverse sectarian landscape of the time. From there, we'll look at how the definition of Jew changed after this period. And finally, we'll be equipped to answer the question in a way that is historically precise.
Let's begin with our first element, the specific Greek terms used in the original texts. You see, the New Testament does not view the people of the covenant as a single monolithic group. It uses specific words with very distinct meanings.
All right, the most common term, which appears around 195 times, is Judaios. Now, this is almost always translated as Jew, but its primary meaning in the first century was Judean. That is, a person connected to the Roman province of Judea. It's an ethnic and geographic label, often used by outsiders or to refer to the religious authorities in Jerusalem.
In sharp contrast, we have the term Israelites. This word emphasizes a covenantal and religious identity. This is the insider term. It evokes the promises made to the 12 tribes of Israel and the shared status of being God's collective people. Think of it as a theological term, not a geographic one.
And then there is a third term, Hebraeos. This one is all about linguistic and cultural heritage. It highlights a connection to the Hebrew or Aramaic languages and traditional observances, distinguishing those who maintained that purity from others who were more influenced by Greek or Hellenistic culture.
So the crucial point to grasp is the distinction between these terms. Judaios points to nationality and geography. Israelite signals a theological and covenantal status. They are not interchangeable, and the choice of which word is used in the text carries very significant meaning.
Now that we have the proper vocabulary, let's look at the social landscape. Far from being a single, unified group, the society of the Second Temple period was a vibrant and often contentious mix of competing parties, or philosophies, each with its own ideas about the law and its application.
The two most prominent groups you'll encounter are the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and they were on opposite ends of the spectrum on core beliefs. The Pharisees accepted an oral law alongside the written Torah. The Sadducees rejected it. The Pharisees believed in an afterlife. The Sadducees did not. The Pharisees had popular support, while the Sadducees were the aristocratic elite in control of the temple. Understanding this deep internal division is absolutely essential.
In addition to them, you had the scribes. Now, these were not a separate sect, but rather a professional class of legal experts and scholars. They were the ones who taught and interpreted the law, and they were very often aligned with the Pharisaic school of thought.
Now, to understand why our modern word Jew is such a poor fit, we need to move forward in time. The definition we use today comes from what is known as the modern rabbinic standard. This standard did not exist in the first century. It developed after the destruction of the temple in 70 CE.
This modern standard operates on two key layers. The first is halachic status, which is essentially a legal identity. Under Jewish law, or halakha, a person is Jewish if they are born to a Jewish mother or undergo an authorized conversion. The second layer is theological alignment. This requires accepting the authority of the oral Torah and the rabbinic tradition that developed from the teachings of the Pharisees.
And this is where the nuance becomes crystal clear. If we apply this modern standard retroactively, we see something fascinating. By the legal definition of halakha, Jesus is considered Jewish because his mother, Miriam, was a Judean woman. But when it comes to theological alignment, he is not. His teachings critique the traditions of the elders, and he claimed a personal authority at odds with the developing rabbinic system. The Pharisees, on the other hand, are seen as the very founders of that system.
So now we can address the final element, the core problem of applying the modern word Jew retroactively. This is the problem of anachronism.
We have to recognize this immense historical gap. The destruction of the temple in 70 CE was a cataclysmic event that fundamentally reshaped identity. The system that defines the modern term Jew, rabbinic Judaism, was codified in the centuries after this event, with key texts like the Mishnah being compiled around 200 CE.
Using the English word Jew for first-century figures is what is called a retrojection. It projects a later idea back onto the past, and in doing so, it flattens the unique geographic, political, and sectarian complexities of that era. The word carries with it centuries of post-biblical history that simply did not exist for the people living at the time. The shift is profound. The ancient term Iudaeos was primarily geographic and political. The modern term Jew is fundamentally ethno-religious, shaped by a post-temple rabbinic system that developed in a diaspora context. They are two different categories of identity.
Because of this, a historically precise answer simply cannot use the modern term anachronistically. To do so is to confuse two different systems of identity, separated by a major historical rupture.
So what then was the identity of Jesus? He was an Israelite of the tribe of Judah. This lineage made him a Yehudi in Hebrew, or a Judaios in Greek. In the ancient ethnic geographic sense of the word, he operated entirely within the diverse, temple-centered world of the Second Temple period. He was not and could not have been a Jew as defined by the post-temple rabbinic system, which came into existence after his lifetime.
And what this does is it reframes the entire conversation. The important inquiry is not a simple who was what, but a much more rigorous examination of how and when our fundamental terms of identity are defined.
Which leaves us with a final thought. We must be critical of the words we use. We must ask ourselves, how do our modern labels, which we so often take for granted, shape and perhaps distort our understanding of a past that operated with a completely different set of categories?